The 7 differences between CB and amateur radio. Number 1. With CB, you just buy a type-approved radio and use it. Whereas with ham radio, you need to do an exam and get a call sign, but then you can use any type of radio, even ones you build yourself. Number 2. With CB, you've got a radio with set channels on a narrow frequency band. Maybe even more than one band if you're in some countries. Whereas with amateur radio, you have a lot of frequency bands and can transmit anywhere within them, picking any frequency. Number 3. With CB, most of your communication will be short distance, maybe 5 to 30 kilometers, with only a few exceptions. Whereas with amateur radio, you can routinely transmit all over the world. Other thing is transmitting modes. Difference number 4. With CB, you can only talk. Whereas with amateur radio, you can not only talk, but also send pictures, text, and Morse code. Number 5. For CB, you can use it for business. Whereas with amateur radio, business or commercial communication is strictly prohibited. Number 6. With CB, you can let your family and friends use the radio, no problems at all. Whereas with amateur radio, you need to be present and in control of the transmitters if others speak on it. And finally, with CB, you're restricted to a low transmitter power, which normally restricts your transmit range, a point I mentioned before. Whereas with amateur radio, you can use much higher transmitter powers with more reliable, longer distance communications. So that's the 7 differences between CB and amateur radio. Different horses for different courses. If you don't want to do an exam, just want short range, low cost communication that anyone can use for any purpose, then CB radio is the ideal choice. More information on my website at VK3YE.com. Whereas if you're more interested in the technology of radio, want more versatility, and want to experiment with equipment, operating modes, and antennas, then amateur radio is the one you should pick. More details of that in 2 of my books, Ham Radio Get Started, a beginner guide for amateurs in the United States, or a similar book for Australia, the Australian Ham Radio Handbook. More details of those on my website VK3YE.com, or you can search their titles on Amazon.